What is the most fucked up thing a person you know has done? My aunt scammed the whole family pretending that she was going to buy my disabled grandfather a piece of medical equipment he needed. Everyone in the family pitched in and gave her a few $100 to $1,000 each to pay for it. She took the money and ghosted the entire family and has never shown her face again. Triple homicide. He's doing life without parole, but she and her kids are still dead. So, is it Chris Watts? No, his name is Kevin Mosley. Her name was Monica. She didn't show up for work and the kids didn't show up for school, so her mom and I drove out there and they were dead. He always did give off bad vibes before that, like cleaning his guns and talking about how nobody in their right mind would mess with him at the Thanksgiving table. When I see family keeping Mima alive, intubated and forever in a vegetative state, only to keep cashing in those social security checks. This is currently happening with my 100-year-old grandmother. She has been in a vegetative state for over a decade. I know my relatives are milking the situation. Worked in the office next to a guy who used his daughter to make child abuse material. Locked her in a dog crate and took pictures. Tried to hire a guy to kill his wife with a sword and film it. He's serving over 100 years in prison now. Oh my god, my husband worked with a girl who was involved with a pedo ring and one of the victims was her daughter. I actually saw the news on Facebook before him and asked if he knew her. Turns out he did. He said she was a little shy and awkward, but never would have suspected that. So I've shared before, my daughter passed away in 2020. I was a single mom and tried to start dating in 2022. Met a man in a child loss support group before I met my husband. We started dating for a few months, found out he never lost a child and used it to pick up women. What the fuck? How did you find out? When we made it Facebook official, his ex-wife, who wasn't his ex yet as he hadn't signed the divorce papers, contacted me and told me to be careful. I said I was so sorry that you lost a child too, and it went from there. When I was 16, I dated a guy from the next town over. A few years ago, I looked him up and found out he was in prison, serving 60 years for multiple counts of child molestation and rape. Was he crazy when you dated? He was an 18-year-old guy who had just aged out of the foster care system when I met him. Tragic story of alcoholic parents and experiencing some level of abuse himself when he was a kid. Not really that surprising that he turned out to be what he is. About 20 years ago, when I was a young teen, I started hanging around with a bad crowd. After a few weeks, they introduced me to this older nice guy who lived in a block of flats. He only let 2 of us in at a time, and would give us booze, drugs, etc. I always thought it was weird and refused to take anything that he offered us. Because of this, he always said that he liked me for being smart. He taught us how to drive and got my mate to break into warehouses, etc. After a while, I thought it was too weird, and I didn't like what my friends were doing. I told my parents and a few friends' parents what was going on, but nobody seemed bothered. Fast forward a few months after I stopped hanging out with them, my neighbor came to my house and said that an older man was asking for me in a car. He ended up driving around my estate and spotted another mate from the same crowd. He ended up kidnapping him and selling him to a child prostitution ring in Manchester. He was raped for a few months. After he was released, he sued Manchester police and won, but he used that money on drugs, which ended up killing him. It always frightens me looking back. Edit. After I posted this, I decided to look at what happened to the pedo, and it turns out he is back in his old flat. Do the neighbors know? Is it me, or is Manchester a particularly shit place to be a vulnerable kid? I believe so. I actually read it on a Facebook page called Predator Awareness or something similar. Someone said, my best friend died because of this man and he is still in the same flat. The flat keeps getting trashed, but he is still there. That was posted 3 weeks ago. My mom came to my hospital room after I gave birth exclusively to tell me that my baby who was in the NICU was going to die and that it would be my punishment from God for marrying a, insert racial slurs here. Hope she's no longer in your life. What an awful thing to say. No, she isn't. I want my girls to be proud of their heritage, not taught the meaning of the term San Nig. I wasn't allowed to go to my grandpa's funeral because I decided to hang out with friends the night before. I never got to say a proper goodbye. I will never forgive my parents for that. Knew a girl growing up who killed her hamster by throwing it as hard as she could against a wall multiple times a day until eventually she broke its neck. The following 2 months, she would periodically dig its body up to look at it. She was fucked up on many different levels, but I ultimately stopped talking to her when she got married and wrote me a letter about how awful of a person I was because I expressed concern over her marrying a man she had known for 6 months. Said letter and said marriage were both sanctioned and orchestrated by our former pastor, whom I also do not talk to after he also sanctioned a marriage between a 17-year-old girl and her youth pastor lol. My cousin killed all 3 of her children and stuffed them in bins in her storage unit. She's doing life in prison. Last fall my tax preparer ghosted me. I thought it was strange, thought he died or something. New tax preparer asked if I had Googled him. I hadn't, and when I did I found out he disappeared because he was convicted as a pedophile in my town. That second story, my dad befriended the anesthesiologist at my birth. For 14 years they were friends, he'd buy my family's wine, they'd go out to dinner. But when I was 14 the guy and his wife ghosted my dad and stepmom shortly after they went out to dinner with them. Find out 7 years later he and his woman partner, they were not married, it was a front, were arrested for human trafficking, prostitution, and tax evasion. She would go to Thailand and Vietnam, tell young women there she had a job for them, bring them back to the States, put them up in a luxury apartment, and have them be prostitutes under them. Dude was caught squatting in a home doing meth with a prostitute. When a bike cop caught him, he got his information and arrested him. He was released with a trial to be set. Problem is dude didn't give his name, he gave my name and my mom's address. Dude was my little brother. That's not even the messed up part. My mom was getting notifications in the mail for my name to appear in court sent to her home. Then notifications for a warrant. She said nothing to me because, as she later explained after I was arrested at my work, I didn't think you would be in trouble. You know how many times your brother has been in prison, I just couldn't see that happen to him again. I told her that I requested the arresting officer to be at the trial and that I would be bringing a picture of my brother. She begged and pleaded with me to not do that. Fortunately, a friend of mine represented me pro bono, so at least I had that going for me. My counsel asked to approach the bench before trial started and showed the judge the picture. The judge then asked the officer to approach, and all I heard was the cop point to me and say, "Yeah, that's not the guy." He pointed at the picture and said, "That's the guy." Judge just sighed heavily and said, "Case dismissed," and that was that. Years later, I was pulled over at a traffic stop. The officer ran my name and it still came up that someone with warrants could be impersonating me, so I had to prove I was who I said I was by taking off my shirt in the cold to show I had no tattoos. Good times. Chopped a debt collector or friend up into pieces after freezing the body to make it easier, and getting caught when a foot came floating out of the Mekong. What in the season 1 Dexter? It was an interesting day when that news came out. Found out that my ex was cheating on me on the nights I would stay at the hospital to take care of my dying stepdad. Never dated women after that and stopped being bi lol. My brother's wife accused someone of raping her at 16 and ruined his life because of it. She's 22 now and she told me that when she was drunk one night in full confidence. I was obviously worried, so I followed up with her the next morning and asked if it was true and she admitted it. Then she said, "It's okay though, I've forgiven myself, I was young and dumb." Obviously I was amazed by that logic, and I explained to her that what she did is really fucked up. Then I asked if the guy had ever forgiven her and after a full circle moment she realized she never told the truth about it. That is by far the most sickening and fucked up thing I've ever heard from another human being. Is the guy in prison? I don't know. She said his girlfriend left him and some of his family quit talking to him after she told them he raped her. She laughed while saying all of that too, but that could just be because she was drunk or nervous. My mother-in-law lied to her now ex-husband about being on birth control so that she could have a second child, which he didn't want. It worked, and she conceived the last time that they had sex. I have mixed feelings about it because that second baby grew up and became my wife, but still pretty bad. Said her surrogate, who is also her best friend, was milking the fact that she almost bled out giving birth. Said her friend was saying it for attention. It's been 4 months and she still owes her friend $6. The final payment of $40,000 total. No good deed goes unpunished. My mother-in-law signed full custody over to her husband and the abusive stepmother she'd called CPS on in the past. When my husband was removed, CPS called her and said, "We will send your son on a plane to you at our expense. What flight can you meet?" She said it wasn't her problem since dad had full custody and abandoned her son in the foster care system in another state for 5 years. But the most fucked up thing is how she insists she was a great mother. I had this happen once as a child advocate, basically a lawyer appointed to look after a child's interests. Boy about 8 had been removed from the care of his abusive father. The mom, who had remarried and had 2 kids and another on the way, said that it was not ideal for our. I said sure, and sued her ass for child support. That got her and hubby in court. They were busy protesting why it was too expensive and unfair, and then new hubby comes up to me to talk man to man. I told him regardless of what happens, his wife's salary was going to get garnished monthly. He went to her, they had a hushed discussion, and suddenly mom wanted her eldest back. Left the bars drunk as hell. Hit a woman that was out on a jog. Left the woman to die in the road and drove home and parked their car in the garage. Their roommate saw the smashed to shit windshield and heard about the pedestrian on the news. Put 2 and 2 together, the person gets arrested while at work. Their parents were rich, influential people, so they barely served any time. This just happened pretty much the same way locally with an acquaintance of mine. He killed someone drunk, continued home. Says they were doing suicide by car. He's self-representing at his upcoming trial. I'm sure it'll go well. My older sister fooled our family into believing she had terminal cancer for 2 years so they can support her drug addiction. I was the last one to believe her, but luckily I was too young to have money to give her, however not too young to lose all respect for her. I'm just curious if your sister ever got clean and made amends with your family? I know this all too well, as do lots of others. Nope. Swears she's clean, but her behaviors and physical appearance say otherwise. My cousin went to prison for doing something to his children. He only got 4 years because one of the kids didn't want to admit it. The police investigating didn't seize his laptop or anything, and my uncle had to keep it in storage. While in prison he said, "Other people in here did way worse than me, so why is everyone in the family treating me bad? And, what I did isn't that bad." Total lack of empathy or remorse. When he was being released, he tried to have himself released to my aunt and uncle's home, who refused. They had 9 grandkids, 2 of which were not to be in contact with him at all. It took a lot of fighting to have this overturned. He ended up in a place about 20 minutes away. When he was being released, my uncle brought up the laptop. The policeman he'd been arguing with about the release address said, "You've had it in your possession, so if there's stuff on it, we can prosecute you." A new cop joined the conversation and collected the items for investigation. When he was released, he asked for his stuff back, focusing on the laptop, and lost it when it was found to be given to police. Now he cries on Twitter about being a father whose baby mama won't let him see his precious children and posts photos with cryptic messages about being in the area. The 2 girls are doing well. So what was in the laptop? Why didn't the cops seize it? I unfortunately don't know. I really wouldn't want to know. For starters, he was at least 10 years older than me, so I wasn't exactly filled in at the time with what was happening. Once he got locked up and started to say what he did wasn't that bad, his family stopped the little contact they had with him after what he did became known. It became like he died. No one speaks his name, which was why the release to the house was an issue. My uncle wasn't about to open it as he didn't want to know or see it, and once it was handed over we didn't see or hear from him again. I only know about the Twitter stuff from his ex-wife. My ex-wife left me penniless 8 days after I sold my company following a brain cancer diagnosis on me. Not only that, she absconded with our daughter for a month, so I was fighting her in court, and fighting for my life. I truly had nothing to live for, and shouldn't be here. I had sold my means of making a living. She took almost $500,000 cash, and emptied every account we had. However, that was 2014. She's gotten fat, has a fat-ass boyfriend, I'm still alive, remarried, and my daughter lives with me. Virginia law said I couldn't go after her for the money because it was in joint accounts and cash, much not claimed on taxes. Careful who you count as dead, sometimes we are too mean for the devil to take us. My first girlfriend and I, 17 to 18 years old, hung around this lady and her husband, who were in their mid-late 30s. She had teenagers over at her house a lot because she was a street team manager for a popular local band, so they would come over to get merch, CDs, and just to hang out. She was giving and selling these kids weed, pills, and alcohol, and slept with a couple of them, including a threesome with her husband and a 16-year-old girl. She tried to pressure my first girlfriend and I to smoke weed and have sex in front of her so she could to take pictures of it. We didn't. I'm glad my ex was more sensible than I was. I was gullible enough back then that I probably would have fallen prey to her. My adopted kid had a crazy bio mom. When the kid was about 7, her mom stabbed her with a kitchen knife in the thigh. Her brother would lock multiple siblings in a room upstairs and proceed to molest the sisters one after the other. The crazy mom used government food stamps to buy drugs. Kids half starved. My daughter came to us at 12 years old and would eat potting soil when no one was looking. There's a lot more crap too. Good news is that thousands of hours of therapy, talk, art, horse, EMDR, and along with sensory reprocessing, she's been able to reclaim her life. My dad took me and my siblings to a water park once during our court-ordered visitation. We didn't get to go in the water park. We didn't even get to get out of the car. We just got to watch other children on the other side of the fence play in the water through the car's windshield. Why? So that when we got home we would beg our mom to take us. And we did beg. But she totally could not afford it. It never happened, but she sure felt bad not being able to take us. He also once brought us home from visitation with a baby chick for each of the 6 of us. Again, just to fuck with my mom, who could not in any sense allow us to keep 6 baby chickens in the 2-bedroom house we lived in through the generosity of our grandparents who were letting us live with them. I'm sorry, but your dad is an asshole. I hope you kids are kind to your mother. He was pretty bad. Passed away about 26 years ago now. Mom's still with us, but has pneumonia in the hospital right now. We all think fondly of her.